Story 1. Gas Station Encounter. Bakersfield, California, 2018. Some people collect the good days like postcards, bright, flat little proofs that life is gentle if you hold it at arm's length. Me, I seem to keep the other kind. The ones that crawl up from the dark when the room goes quiet. Not because I want to, because they refuse to be left behind. And this one always starts with the same sound. A buzzing light over a half-empty parking lot. The kind of light insects fling themselves at because they can't tell the difference between survival and danger. I couldn't either. Not that night. Back then, I was living small. On purpose. Bakersfield, 2018. A rental that smelled like dust and old paint, a job at a print shop that wore the same hum every day, and a calendar that never surprised me. Friends sometimes, playlists often, bed early. I told myself that stillness was safety. But late autumn Bakersfield has stretches of road that feel unfinished, like someone forgot to fill in the edges. Old truckers on Union Avenue call them dead roads, places where your tires sing the wrong note and you glance at the rear view because you can feel a set of eyes just beyond the glass. Laugh if you want. I used to. After midnight, I left my friend Callie's place with the good kind of tired. Her street was quiet, damp air promising rain that hadn't started yet. My car unlocked with a chirp that sounded too loud, like it didn't belong to the hour. The engine coughed awake, a familiar rattle that made the dash lights flare, and that's when I saw the needle. Lounging there with all the time in the world. I told myself I could make it home. I told myself a lot of things. The orange light blinked, patient as a metronome, and I took the Union Avenue exit toward the only place I knew stayed open. The 7-Eleven looked like a stage set someone forgot to strike. A dented pickup clung to one pump, empty cab, hood still warm. In the far corner, a dark sedan sat with its headlights off, a square of night inside a bigger night. The sign buzzed, flicker, flicker, buzz, that electrical insect hum that says, I'm alive, but only barely. Bakersfield's silence isn't soft. It's hollow, like something's been scooped out of it. I stepped into that hollow with my jacket buttoned wrong and my keys between my fingers. The smell hit first gasoline braided, with burnt coffee, sugar, and the ghost of cigarettes. I slid the nozzle into the tank, thumbed the lever, and told my shoulders to unclench. That's when I noticed him. Far pump, torn denim jacket, shoulders hunched like a question no one wanted to answer. He swayed without moving his feet, eyes too bright and not focused on anything I could see. I looked away and watched the numbers climb. He looked back and started toward me. Got a cigarette? Gravel poured through a broken tin can. His voice lived in the bottom of it. Don't smoke, I said, soft, like sound might crack the air. I kept my gaze on the pump, the way you do when you want to turn a person into background. He didn't leave. He occupied the space between my breath and the next one, muttering to someone who wasn't me. You can tell the difference between talking and arguing, between a conversation and a fight. He was losing to something I couldn't hear. His fist hit the metal casing of his own pump. The clang jumped straight through my teeth. I flinched and hated that I did. You okay? Slipped out, useless as an umbrella in a windstorm. Another mutter. Faster now. Syllables tripping over each other. He wandered toward the strip of gravel by the store and crouched like he was praying or digging. When he stood, a rock filled his hand. The first one smacked the concrete a breath from my shoe. The second met my door with a dull, deliberate thud. It sounded like the world practicing how to break. Hey, stop. Instinct, not strategy. He didn't look up, as if the point wasn't me at all, but the sound the rocks made. The third rock hit the pump, a hollow slap that felt like a dare. dragging my eye just enough that I saw it. Movement inside the dark sedan. Not a face, not even a shape I could own. Just the uneasy shift of weight behind tinted glass. A presence adjusting itself. Like something waking up. My tank was only half full. I lied to myself and decided it was enough. The nozzle scraped as I yanked it free, gasoline spattering my shoe with a cold chemical kiss that made the night smell sharper. I jammed the handle back into its cradle, slid into the driver's seat, locked the doors with a slap that sounded panicked, even to me. He walked toward my window, not hurrying, not threatening, just closing distance the way the tide does. The rock hung loose in his grip. He stopped close enough that I could see the pale crescent scars on his knuckles. Then he smiled. That's the part that still bothers me. In the softest hours, the way his mouth knew the steps and his eyes refused to dance. Smiles shouldn't be empty. This one was a room with the lights off. I didn't give the moment another inch. Drive. The wheels chirped, the car lurched, the lot spun past. In the rear view, he shrank to a cutout against the pump. The sedan's headlights rose like eyes opening. I couldn't tell if it followed. Every corner had teeth. I turned down streets I didn't need, cut through a neighborhood where sprinklers whispered to dead grass, and only when my bones stopped humming did I call 911. My description sounded like it was written on a fogged mirror. The dispatcher's voice was steady in the way bridges are supposed to be steady. We have other calls on a mail at that location. Units en route. Home looked smaller when I pulled up, like fear had been living there rent-free without telling me. I sat in the car with the engine off and both hands still white on the wheel, listening for an engine that wasn't mine. Nothing. Inside, my apartment had that after-midnight echo where every appliance clicks just to prove it's there. I checked the peephole twice. I slept like a person practicing, not performing. Daylight has a way of shrinking monsters to the size of your palm. I drove back for coffee just to prove the night wrong. The lot looked ordinary, sun, bleaching out the corners, a candy wrapper making slow laps on a breeze. But the far spot where the sedan had idled felt like a bruise the light couldn't warm. The cashier, a woman with half-moon shadows under her eyes, told me he'd been around for days. On and off, she said. You know, she didn't have a word that made it better. I stood by the pump to sip coffee that tasted like regret and cardboard and kept my gaze trained anywhere but the corner. That's when a new thought arrived, without knocking. We talk about predators like they're loud, like they want the scene, the scream, the chase. The worst ones are patient. They learn the choreography, the fuel light you ignore, the route you trust, the way a smile can open a door you thought you'd locked. People online love to argue about intention, about drugs or sickness or bad luck. The officer the night before said the calls fit a pattern. Patterns are just stories wearing uniforms. I wish I could tell you it ended with a neat, satisfying knot. An arrest, a confession, headlines. That's another story we tell ourselves to feel taller than the dark. What I have is this: a flicker, a grin with the lights off, a second car that breathed when I did, and a lesson that shows up now whenever the station is empty and the bulb above the pump hums like it's luring something. If you feel watched, you probably are. If the air goes heavy, don't wait for it to explain itself. The night doesn't owe you clarity. It offers you choices. People collect sunny days. I keep the weather warnings. That lot, that man, that sedan. They live in the drawer where I keep the memory that says leave early, park under the camera, top off before sunset. Because danger doesn't always slam the door. Sometimes it props it open with a smile and waits for you to step closer. And the only reason this story belongs to me, and not to someone telling it about me, is that I left before the quiet decided it was ready. I used to think fear was noisy. Sirens, shouts, the drum of running feet. But real fear is a breath on the glass and a flicker that asks, "Are you paying attention?" That night in Bakersfield taught me to answer yes. Because the next story didn't give me a parking lot and a getaway. It put me behind a counter with a phone in my hand and a man already inside the building moving toward the place where the lights don't reach. And the first sign wasn't a scream. It was a door that beeped even though no one had come in. Story 2. The Night Shift Intruder. Clearwater, Florida, 2021. I used to think the night shift was perfect for someone like me. The quiet suited me. I didn't crave crowds or noise, just a steady paycheck and enough silence to study for my criminal justice degree. Clearwater, Florida, February of 2021. I had a part-time overnight job at a 7-Eleven on Gulf to Bay Boulevard, a place busy by day with beach traffic. But by midnight, the world outside shrank to a handful of headlights and the thick, wet Florida air that fogged your glasses the second you stepped outside. The store itself was a cocoon of humming refrigerators and the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. They bleached the aisles into a tired shade of white, the kind that made time feel slippery. By 12:30 a.m., I was alone. The earlier customers, a rideshare driver, a painter buying scratch-offs, a grandmother agonizing over gum flavors, had come and gone. I sat behind the counter with a cup of burnt coffee, half reading a case study, half listening to the cooler's steady drone. That drone had become my lullaby, a sound so constant you stopped noticing it. But that night, I learned that silence can have teeth. The first sign was the beep, the automatic chime that announced the front door had opened. My eyes flicked to the clock. 12:38 a.m. But no one walked in. The glass door eased open a few inches, slow, like a hand was pressing it just enough to trigger the sensor. I stared, waiting for a face, a body, something. Instead, the green motion light blinked twice and went solid. "Hello?" My voice cracked against the tiled floor, sounding too large in the empty store. Nothing. I pushed back from the counter, sneakers squeaking, and scanned the parking lot through the windows. The mist hung heavy, swallowing the streetlights until they looked like fuzzy orbs. Only one car sat in the lot, a silver sedan near the far pump. The windows were too dark to read, like blacked-out eyes. Probably the wind, I told myself, or a glitch in the sensor. Still, I made sure the door latched fully before stepping back behind the counter. The hum of the coolers filled in the silence again, but I couldn't shake the way the air seemed heavier. 10 minutes crawled by. I poured another coffee, trying to bury the moment under routine. That's when the second sign came. A thump at the back of the building. Not a random knock or the groan of settling pipes. This was sharp, deliberate, like a flat palm slapping the steel delivery door. The sound vibrated through the floor tiles into my shoes. I crouched and flipped on the tiny black and white monitor connected to the rear camera. My stomach dropped. He was there. A man in a dark hoodie, head bent low, hands gripping the door handle like he was testing it. He didn't move, didn't pace, didn't fidget. He just stood there, tugging, patient as a lockpick. My memory punched me. An hour earlier, around 11:15, he had come in for a bottle of water. He hadn't spoken except to pay, but his eyes had lingered not on me, not exactly, but on the stockroom door behind me. Now he was back, circling, like he'd been waiting for the lights to dim and the lot to empty. My throat was dry when I lifted the receiver and dialed 911. 7-Eleven on Gulf to Bay, I whispered. There's a man at the back door trying to get in. I'm alone. The dispatcher's calm tone anchored me as I rattled off details. Dark hoodie, average build, standing still like a shadow that had grown teeth. Then the monitor flickered. One frame, him at the door. The next, empty. I blinked, leaned closer, tapped the side of the screen. Nothing. And then the front door chimed. It didn't ease open this time. It slammed, the bell jangling against the glass. He was inside. My lungs seized. He moved fast, his strides long and deliberate, heading straight for the back without even glancing at me. "Hey, you can't go back there!" The words tumbled out thin and broken. He didn't stop. His hood swayed as he disappeared into the stockroom. My hand twitched toward the baseball bat under the counter, but I didn't trust my grip. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, whispering to the dispatcher, "He's inside now." He went to the back. The coolers hummed. The clock ticked. Then came the muttering, a fast, jumbled stream of words too tangled to understand, as though he was arguing with himself in a language only he knew. A metallic scrape followed, the sound of something heavy dragging across concrete. The dispatcher kept me talking, told me officers were minutes away, but each second stretched like wire pulled too tight. Red and blue light finally bled through the front windows, flashing against the glossy floor. Uniforms stormed in, sharp voices cutting the silence, ordering commands. They vanished into the back. I couldn't move. My knees had locked. My fingers still clutched the receiver like a lifeline. When the officers returned, they weren't dragging out a drunk. They were pinning a man to the ground, a kitchen knife glinting in one officer's hand. He'd been crouched in the corner, waiting. "Not high," one officer told me later. "No alcohol, nothing in his system." The words made my stomach turn colder. If it wasn't drugs, if it wasn't madness, then it was intent, pure and deliberate. I closed early that night, Saturday, in my car with the engine running, headlights on, too afraid to leave the lot. And when I finally went home, the only image that returned in the silence of my apartment wasn't the knife. It was the first beep, that door opening when no one walked in. Because the thought I can't shake, the one that wakes me at 3 a.m., is that maybe he was already there, already inside the store, just waiting for me to notice. People think fear announces itself with weapons or screams, but I learned that night it starts smaller. A chime when nothing moves, a silence with weight, a warning you're too willing to dismiss. And I should have known better, because just 2 years earlier in Oregon, another story taught me the same lesson. Danger doesn't just creep through unlocked doors, it can stalk the path you think you know by heart. And it only needs you to repeat it once too often. Story 3. The Morning Stalker, Ashbourne, Oregon, 2019. I've always liked mornings. The hush before the world yawns awake, the sting of cold air still clinging to your lungs, the way streetlights flicker out one by one as dawn bleeds in. Back in November of 2019, those mornings were my rhythm. Up at 4:45, shoes laced by 5:02, cutting across town to the 7-Eleven, where I worked the early shift in Ashbourne, Oregon. Small town, small life. Just me, a cramped apartment, and my cat Murphy, who liked to bat at my alarm clock when I hit snooze too many times. I could have taken the long way to work, sidewalks and street lamps all the way, but there was a shortcut, a thin patch of woods, barely a quarter-mile wide. Kids used it to get to school. In daylight, harmless. But at 5 a.m., with branches clawing the sky and the path choked in shadows, it felt different. Locals used to whisper about something called the Ashbourne Watcher. Not a person exactly, more like a presence you felt at the corner of your eye. Folklore, I told myself. Just campfire talk. That morning, the ground was soft from last night's rain, leaves sticking to my sneakers as I carried my coffee through the dark, earbuds low, enough to keep me company without drowning out the world. Halfway through the path, the stillness pressed in. No wind, no cars in the distance, just my own crunch of leaves. Then hair raised at the back of my neck, that invisible static when you're being observed. I slowed. The steps behind me slowed too. I stopped. The sound stopped. When I turned, the path was empty, just tangled shadows between tree trunks. My laugh came out too sharp. "Get a grip," I muttered, and walked faster. The steps returned, faint, deliberate, matching mine. The light at the far end of the path glowed like a lighthouse. I didn't run, but my pulse beat like I had. Stepping into the open lot felt like breaching the surface of deep water. The fluorescent glare of the store wrapped around me. Almost safe. Almost. The lot was nearly empty, except for a beat-up blue sedan parked off to the side. Engine off. Windows fogged. I didn't look twice. Not then. Inside, Dennis, the night cashier, was wiping down the Slurpee machine, bleary-eyed. "You're early," he said with a grin. "Couldn't sleep," I lied. I didn't tell him I'd practically power-walked through the trees with a phantom at my back. But as I clocked in, I caught movement through the tiny staff room window, a shadow slipping between the trees where I'd just come from. My gut twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. For the next half hour, I kept busy stocking shelves, counting cigarettes, yet I kept glancing toward the lot. The blue sedan hadn't moved. No headlights, no door opening, no exhaust puffing in the cold. By 5:49, I took the trash out. The dumpster sat near the fence at the edge of the woods. My breath fogged thick in the air. That's when I heard it, a rustle in the brush, deliberate, just beyond the fence. "Hello!" I called out before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, faintly, the crunch of leaves moving away. When I came back inside, Dennis was staring out at the parking lot. "See someone?" I asked. He shook his head. "Number, but that car hasn't moved for an hour. Just sitting there." By sunrise, the sedan was gone. The next morning, the shortcut felt heavier. The same damp leaves, the same cold air. But I kept my earbuds pocketed. I wanted to hear everything. Halfway through, the same prickling awareness clawed up my spine. I looked back, nothing. But when I stepped into the lot, my eyes combed the corners. Empty. No sedan. Inside, Dennis stocked the cooler. "Morning," he said. I nodded, forcing a smile. The routine steadied me, for a while. Until the third morning. I hadn't gone 50 feet into the woods when I heard it. Movement ahead. Not footsteps exactly. More like someone shifting their weight on wet leaves. I froze. The sound froze too. A faint light glowed at the end of the path. But something in my chest screamed, "Turn back." Then click. The unmistakable sound of a lighter. A flare of orange in the dark. For half a second, it lit a face. Male. Unshaven. Late 20s. Watching me. The flame died. I backed up slowly, then turned and walked hard the way I'd come. My chest ached by the time I hit the street. I called an Uber on the spot. Money be damned. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "You see a ghost?" he asked. I forced a laugh. Just someone in the woods. But that night, when I got home, there was something shoved into my apartment door frame. A folded piece of paper. Inside, messy slanted handwriting. "You walk the same way every morning." My blood iced. The police officer who came out was polite but dismissive. "No threat here," he said. "Just words." He didn't understand. Words can be sharper than knives when they mean someone's been watching. I told myself I'd take the long way from now on. No more woods. But paranoia doesn't vanish overnight. A week later, leaving a midday shift, I spotted it again, the blue sedan, parked across the street, engine off, watching. This time, I didn't freeze. I pulled out my phone, zoomed in, snapped a photo, plate and all. The car pulled away as if it knew I'd marked it. My hands didn't shake. I sent the photo to the police with a note. This vehicle has been watching my workplace. They got back the next day. The car was registered to a man with a record trespassing, harassment, no active warrants, but enough to put him on their radar. That didn't make me feel safe. It just made me feel visible. I've kept the long route ever since. I tell myself it was all coincidence, shadows, footsteps, cars that parked too long, but the note still sits in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Patterns are dangerous, and predators notice them before you do. Now, when my alarm goes off, I don't just lace my shoes. I change the route, break the rhythm, because comfort zones make you predictable, and predictability makes you prey. And if you're wondering whether I still think about the Ashbourne Watcher, yes, because sometimes folklore is just a town's way of explaining what no one wants to admit. That someone was already there, hidden in the dark, waiting for me to take the same step one morning too many. And that's what ties all these stories together. The man in the gas station lot, the intruder in Clearwater, the figure in the Oregon woods. They all wanted one thing: routine. For me to trust silence, to ignore the first warning, to take the same path again and again until the trap shut. But I didn't. That's why I can tell you this now. Because danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, patient, quiet, in the corner of a lot, behind a locked door, or just at the edge of the trees. And all it needs is one more step from you.